So there's one acronym that's been in the headlines and all the buzz across various news sites and information sources and everywhere around the world this week, and especially, of course, in Las Vegas. I'm talking about none other than the International CES. They don't even call it the Consumer Electronics Show anymore. They just call it CES, or the International 2015 CES. Hey everyone, I'm Joe DeGanzik. Happy New Year to you. It is 2015. It is the year of flying cars, hoverboards, fax machines in every room, and all kinds of other things that particular movie, Back to the Future Part 2, 30 years ago, many of which they got wrong, some of which they got right. Anyhow, we're here to talk about home automation because that's part of our mission here at Lighting Answers. We're talking about lighting, design, new types of lighting, LED lighting and whatnot. But we've also been working up to getting to home automation. And our episodes have been kind of out of sequence a little bit because a number of them were shot months ago, then finally edited, put online and whatnot. So now we're catching up to real time. It is CES, and CES just got finished in Vegas, and the big buzzword this year was home automation. Of course, you had all the other stuff, drones and every other electronic gadget, smart washing machines, and all the other little gizmos from overseas. But the big news, of course, was home automation, and this year, more than any other year, people were excited about it and excited to see what was going to happen with home automation because there have been so many major plays and so many companies that have been buying each other, and the industry has already been consolidating itself within the past literally 12 months. Last year, both Nest and SmartThings, two basically startup organizations, were bought respectively by Google and then SmartThings being acquired by Samsung. Partnerships were formed over the past year. Insteon set up a partnership with Microsoft. Insteon is a technology that I do recommend for home automation and I do use, but granted there are plenty of other technologies out there. The challenge for you as the consumer, you are watching this program saying, what do I do about home automation? What came out at CES that's important to me? Well, a lot of the products that were announced at CES may have actually debuted earlier. People just like to use the CES stage as a launching platform, but that actually happens less and less these days because there's so much noise that goes on with CES and so many announcements. A number of announcements that did happen this week at CES were announcements relating to HomeKit, Apple's big technology that I even talked about a number of months ago, that we did see the debut of it, but nothing really happened because HomeKit is a platform. It is a way of connecting many different types of technologies and devices together. However, it was going to take a little bit more time for all of that to come to fruition. Now, pardon me while I grab my iPad because I cannot keep up with the massive list of things. And I could go in depth into every single product that came out, but granted, there's plenty of news sites that would give you exact video updates and so forth. And obviously, this is my home. I was not actually at CES, even though I have been to the conference in years past, and it's a lot of fun. It's very draining. All the stories are true. You get sick, you walk a lot, and it's a blast, and it's amazing to go to. Not open to the public, it is open to industry professionals and to the media. Rounding out just a couple of the list, a couple of the products, obviously, like I said, a lot of it revolved around HomeKit. A number of, Nest came out with a number of announcements this week, or actually one major announcement where they added a number of partners. Nest has a program called Works with Nest, which is basically that the thermostat can talk to other devices, or devices can talk to the thermostat and to the smoke detectors. Now, the challenge with that program right now is many of those communications are simply one way. They're not back and forth. And that can cause additional problems for you as a consumer when you think, I'm just going to be able to make all of these little devices talk to each other. Now, of course, many consumers are not necessarily going to be able to take advantage of this because they don't own a Nest. They don't want to spend $250 for a thermostat because most thermostats that they're used to buying are perhaps $30 instead. But anyhow, for the people who can afford it and who want to save up and to buy a smart thermostat and all the other peripherals, there are various things that works with Nest. One startup company that, of course, has been in the news in technology lately and home automation is the August Smart Lock. That was announced that you would be able to do setting away and non-away mode, or home mode, I guess that would be, on your Nest thermostat directly from the August app. In my opinion, it's kind of a dud because the whole concept of a smart lock is that it opens for you as you approach the door and you don't have to get out the app. So kind of useless, but I'll go into more of that, how I get around that with my own home automation in our next coming episode when I talk about home automation in real life. Anyhow, so a number of announcements came up from Nest. I think it was about 10 or 15 new partnerships that they announced. Google, who owns Nest, is really gunning to bring up their list of partners. And the other thing that happened over the past year, which again affects the home automation industry, was the Revolve Hub, which had been available at a number of different retailers and was going to connect many different types of home automation systems together, was bought by Nest and then subsequently shut down to where they're not going to sell it anymore, but they will support the existing owners. So we're not quite sure where that's going, but what I can say, and this is not even something that you need to know that was announced at CES, this is simply the way it's going to be. The smart home wars, or the home automation or Internet of Things as they call it, the players are literally going to be Apple, Google, Samsung, and then you're going to have a number of other people on the periphery who are competing in that space. All the manufacturers are trying to get everyone else on board and trying to make it so that their device, their ecosystem, just like Apple and iTunes versus Google and the Google Play system with, that's on Android, it's the same type of thing. If they can lock you into the ecosystem, it's better for them. They want to have it so that enough devices work with their system. I'm going to put the iPad down since I'm not even reading it from it. Enough of these other devices from other manufacturers work with their own system and own hub or device so that it looks good to the consumer, but we're not quite sure if it's actually really good for the consumer or not. Sometimes too much competition and too many competing technologies is a problem. Just think back in the old days, HD DVD and Blu-ray, and then before that you had VHS and Betamax, and obviously all that stuff is in the past. But we are seeing this initial proliferation, and I have a feeling that consumers are just going to be more confused than ever about really how to do home automation. And I'm going to talk about how to do home automation correctly and more easily in an upcoming episode. Just going down the list, if I'm going to just list these things off, we've got the Grid Connect Connect Sense Smart Outlet. That's like 6 words. That's a little bit ridiculous. So you're seeing these devices that have come out. These are devices that work with Apple's HomeKit platform. iDevices, which has been around for a number of years, they have a smart plug. And what these are basically are these devices that you can basically plug in and plug a lamp or an appliance or something else into it and get remote functionality. Those kind of devices are really not new. They've been around for decades, literally. But now they're getting more smart because they're going to be able to talk to a number of different platforms and a number of different apps. Garage doors got updated. Chamberlain introduced their MyQ. Some of these things have been out there for a while. It's not necessarily anything new. They're just adding HomeKit technology to it. And in doing, they may also be adding some other technologies and upgrading the devices anyways. Insteon, for example, makes a hub device they've been making it for roughly about 2 years now, and they've upgraded it as well, even though they actually released a model about 2 months ago. that was an upgraded model, and now they've upgraded the upgraded model. So some friends of mine actually have it, and they've got to replace it now. But anyhow, they've added HomeKit technology so that that hub can be a bridge from Apple's iOS system and Siri down to all of your devices. And that's what we're seeing now, because all these different competing standards don't necessarily want to hook in directly into every single other device from every other single manufacturer. But if they can hook up to a hub, and the hub provides the translation, so to speak, to another language, then all is well. So what I'm really getting at is, while home automation was the big buzzword at CES, and it was all over the news this week, depending on what news sources you were reading, there's nothing really new. And people were expecting, I think, CES to be just loaded with announcements, and Apple was going to make an announcement, and people just predicted all this stuff. But as we all know, Apple marches to the beat of their own drummer. They will do whatever they want at whatever time of the year they want, and everyone will go, everyone, I'm saying manufacturers, will go out of their mind to make sure that they release all these kind of things possible before Apple does something, because it is pretty well known that Apple comes along at the last minute and supersedes everyone and comes up with a better idea, because they've looked at everyone and everyone else's solution, and they come up with something better. Some people don't think it's better, and in some ways I don't think it's better either. In other ways I do. So in many ways, we are waiting for Apple to actually officially say exactly what HomeKit is going to do, and actually provide some real demos so we know what it's going to do, and then we can kind of all breathe a sigh of relief and move forward into whatever direction we're going to move on to. So lots of announcements at CES this week. All these different products are going to be HomeKit, the iHome Smart Plug, the Schlage Sense Smart Log, the Elgato Eve Motion Environment Sensor, like I mentioned, the garage door. Something else that I'll mention, and this is where we get a little bit more innovation, and you're combining technologies into one device. And what we have seen over the past, say, 2 or 3 years, not necessarily as announcements from CES, and this one wasn't either, but it was there because the manufacturer was there and they were touting the product, even though it had been announced about, I'm going to say about 2 months ago, definitely during the fall or late summer. And this was from, this is a product from Stack Lighting. It's called the Alba LED lamp, and it's a BR30. And it is one of these lamps that's, it's in a sense, it's similar to the Philips Hue, where you can change the color temperature of it. You can't change the color. It doesn't like change from white to red to blue, but it changes on the spectrum of color temperature. Now, I just covered that in the last episode of the Lighting Color mini-series. So if you need to know more about color temperature, go ahead and check that out. Maybe we'll put up a link here so you can click it, but keep watching this video and then go to the other video once you're done. So the Alba allows you to change the color temperature of the bulb. It allows you to actually change it automatically based on a schedule, or just dynamically throughout the day, so that it's actually a brighter sort of sunlight white, or daylight white, as I guess they would call it. There's so many variations during the day, and it gets kind of warmer at night when it's time to kind of get sleepy and the sun's gone down and you're ready for bed. And there's a motion sensor in it as well, so it can actually do interesting things such as lighting up when you're in a room, and of course darkening down when you're leaving a room. That all sounds good in theory. How it works in practice can be potentially annoying. If the motion sensor doesn't think that you're there anymore, it may just turn the lights off. We know that from people who own a Nest, and the Nest goes into away mode when you don't move in your house because it thinks that you're gone away when you're actually watching a movie, or if the sensor is not there. It could be that all light bulbs are supposed to have motion sensors in them so that we have more sensors everywhere and we don't have to install them specifically. Only time will tell how this stuff works. That light bulb also made an announcement. It was part of Nest's announcement that it works with Nest, and it could again help the Nest product family identify if you're actually home, and potentially if you're in a room that might be cooler or warmer than the rest of the house, and the thermostat could compensate for that based on some special magic. We have a lot of products coming out. a humongous amount of products, and I think it's going to be more confusing instead of necessarily helpful for the consumer. Now, I have taken an approach to home automation myself sort of slowly, and I've said, how can it benefit my own life? If home automation makes your life more complicated, it's not worth it at all. I have only gone into home automation to make my own life less complicated, easier, more beautiful through specialized lighting scenes and things that I can just do with the environment in my home that I couldn't do if I didn't have all these devices talking to each other and have the ability to change things at a click of a mouse, press of an app, or press of a button on the wall. Like I said, I've taken my time. I started many years ago with the X10 system, which was very unreliable and difficult to program, difficult to set up. It was definitely DIY. Then I moved to Insteon when it came out, which basically was the successor to X10, and promised a lot of things, and for the most part delivered on a lot of those promises. However, so many people think now, oh, there's something new. There's Z-Wave and Zigbee, HomeKit, and all these other technologies. There's so many of them, and there's so many hubs out there now that Insteon in itself has gotten lost in the noise. But it's still great. But among many of the hubs now that are going to be available to have you kind of bridge all these technologies, Insteon, unfortunately, is not included in many of those hubs, and so I have a concern for how well they're going to do in the future if they don't get included. So we'll hope for that. After Insteon, after a number of years passed, I added a sort of a smart brain to the system, and it allowed me to do even more than just having Insteon little, plug-in or wall devices connected to each other. The central brain allowed me to do a heck of a lot more, and really set up very advanced scenes and also access things remotely. Then I added the hue lights, and they allowed me to add color on demand and change things up on a daily basis and just add a little bit more pizzazz to my environment. And they also allowed me to do geolocation triggering from outside. Then the very latest was I added one of these smart locks, which again, this industry is changing very quickly. There's a number of them that are out there. Some work better than others. Others are made by companies that don't have much venture funding. You're not sure if they're going to be around next week. And I added the August smart lock. It seemed to be the best bet at the time, and the jury's still out. So we'll see how that goes. I like to add things in small little batches and see how it will benefit my life. Now, around this principle, to wrap up, around this CES episode, to kind of wrap this up, CES is great, lots of announcements, some new, some products that have already been around for a while, that it's more like a yawn, like, all right, you already told us about it, okay, you're showing it off, great, it's a real product, when is it shipping, what is it compatible with, and is it really going to do anything for me, or is it going to be a nuisance? So I honestly expected a bit more out of CES this year with home automation, and there really wasn't some sort of killer system. There are a number of could-be killer systems out there that would be absolutely game-changing systems. And again, they're from these big names. You've got SmartThings, which apparently can do a lot, but apparently it's not quite all there yet. You've got Wink, you've got Iris, you've got so many that I can't even list, even though I wrote them all down. Staples is even making their own hub. As strange as that sounds, like very strange companies getting into this business. But they're all vying for your eyeballs and attention. They're vying to be put into your home. And the question is, what are you going to do with them? Now, we're going to cover this topic starting now a bit more than we have. Home automation originally really was just about lighting. That was about the only thing you could control several decades ago, and then slowly it moved into all these other systems. And originally, of course, it was very proprietary. To do it right and to have it ultra reliable, you had to spend ultra bucks. Nowadays, not so much, if you do it slowly and if you add things just at a gradual pace. So we're going to talk about that. I'm going to be going through a number of things with home automation. There's a lot of footage that I shot that I was explaining the much larger space that I used to live in until recently, and I had to move and downsize. So it's actually kind of fun to compare and contrast how you do home automation in a larger space compared to a smaller space. But many of the principles still apply. So I want to talk you through that as we go through new episodes coming up soon. We are going to go into the other topics I mentioned, some specialty LED lamps, and I'll also be dedicating an entire episode to how to properly light your kitchen, which of course is the main gathering room of the house. Very, very important. So all that ties into home automation. It all ties into lighting. It all ties into LED lighting, and it all ties into this series. So if you were expecting a lot more information and product reviews and exact details from CES, most of what was announced there had already been announced, and some of it was new, and we're not really going to see the results of how those products work out because honestly, they're not even available yet. Even a few of these that did say that they're going to be shipping on a certain date is still at least a month away. And we do believe that Apple is going to make some sort of announcement regarding HomeKit and how that's going to really affect the industry and affect you, and how you'll be able to use it immediately with your devices and how you'll be able to use it, and you'll have to buy some extra stuff. We do think it's going to be revolving the Apple TV for remote control outside your home, but for people who are in the Apple ecosystem, you don't need an Apple TV to control things with your iPhone, iPad, iOS device, anything that supports Siri, we think. We're not quite sure how you'll be able to do it without Siri, but somehow you'll be able to do that. So it's going to be interesting to see how all of this shakes out. I'm looking forward to it. It's an exciting time. It is a confusing time to be a consumer, so I will always try to give you the best advice. And for now, the best advice I can give you is continue watching us, continue watching the news, and we'll keep you informed on all this cool stuff revolving home automation. I'm Joe DeGanzik. Talk to you next time.